Hi folks, Joe Bongiovanni here from the Kettle Pond Institute for Debt-Free Money. This is going to be a short video about Q8 on the Randy Ray and Bill Mitchell interview that was done several years ago, but which I only found recently on the net. I wanted to say something about Q8, which is that the interviewer said to these guys, well, okay, you've sort of explained about taxation, very much sort of, but why would then the sovereign fiat money system would the government need to borrow? And Randy's response was, well, of course, sovereign government cannot really borrow. Okay, imagine that. The sovereign government really can't borrow. It's like, can that really stand the light of day? That the interviewer didn't say, well, what do you mean you can't borrow? Aren't those borrowings? Aren't those certificates of indebtedness issued by the government against the full faith and credit of the nation, up to the tune of $16 trillion? All that paper's out there, and if the government can't borrow, really, what's it doing with that stuff? So I don't know. So it's one of those weird things about modern monetary theory that I never could quite understand. It's like, how does anybody listening to that square the reality, the political economic reality, the monetary economic reality, with a statement like that? Okay, look, you guys, you say the sovereign government is the monopoly issuer of the currency, and that it doesn't need either taxes or debt proceeds, the proceeds from issuing debt, to pay its bills. Well, that being the case, why does it borrow money? And they say, well, really, they can't borrow money. Well, of course they can borrow money. They borrow money almost every day, okay? And they pay back money almost every day. Pay back money every day. So what's the deal here with that? How come that passes muster for scholarship in monetary science? Anybody care to explain that? I'd be glad to hear it. But then two things happen. One is that Randy goes on to explain that when the government does issue bonds, okay, it issues bonds, okay. When the government issues bonds, it's not doing it to fund itself. It's doing it because the central bank needs action to drain reserves out of the reserve system, which is something that is strictly between the central bank and the depository institutions that are members of the system. Okay? So think about that. We're $16 trillion in debt because the central bank can't figure out any other way to get reserves out of its system unless the government sells bonds. Imagine a fractured fairy tale built around that concept. And that's what you're getting with this. And the fact that Bill Mitchell is in there is like a huge disappointment to me personally, because it calls into question either his understanding. Now, interestingly, on this video, in one of the previous videos, I commented that very unfortunately Bill piped in with Warren's thing about, well, if you ever paid your taxes with cash, the proof that the government don't need your money is that the IRS shreds it, throws it in the shredder because they don't need it. Now, Bill, not being up to speed at that time, that this had been widely criticized, especially and including by me directly with Warren Mosler, that he put it out there in that way. But Randy turned it around a little bit, and he said, well, what they do, because when they get their IOUs back, that's what he calls getting their IOUs back. Okay, what they do is they look at the bill and they see if it's okay to use it. If it's not okay to use it, they put it in the shredder pile. If it's okay to use it, they put it back on the shelf to use it later. Now, that's a veiled attempt to CYA on this issue of the Internal Revenue Service shredding your money, and of the government not needing your tax money in order to pay its bills. Okay? The government needs your tax money in order to pay its bills. Period. Ask anybody at Treasury. Okay? And it's not the IRS, it's the IRS has to turn over every one of those bills that it gets to the Federal Reserve. And of course, in its ordinary currency management operation, the Federal Reserve takes a look at all the bills that come through and sees if they're still suitable for circulation, and for the ones that are not, they have a procedure for taking them out of circulation. Okay, that it involves a shredder or not a shredder, quite frankly, I don't know, and it's immaterial, but what it involves is removing it from circulation and replacing it in circulation. Whoever brought in the bad one can get a new good one. But that has nothing to do with issuing money. It has nothing to do with the government issuing debt. It has nothing to do with taxation. So even though, again, it was a veiled attempt to cover what Bill had said earlier, which was fine, it doesn't explain anything, and it's just another of these that's going out there. So I know there's like another 8 or 9 or 10 more of these, so in a way I can't wait to see how they all go. Thanks from Q8.